feel like there's so much to unpack here that I honestly don't even really know where to begin. I started my YouTube channel probably about 7-8 years ago, which I'm not a big channel by any means, but I've always kind of been somebody who talks about, I guess, like more, I don't want to say controversial topics because I don't feel like they're controversial, but I feel like I've always kind of talked about things that other people have, I don't want to say shied away from, but have been kind of shamed into not talking about, and today's going to be one of those videos. So when I started my channel about 7 years ago, I was in a really bad place mentally. It was when my OCD first started getting really bad. I used Booktube and YouTube and all of that as my escape. So I would come on, I would plan these videos, I would film them. The big reason why I did it is because I wanted to connect with other people. I didn't have a whole lot of people in my life, and that's because of choices I made and the place that I was kind of at, you know, in my life at the time. And so when I discovered Booktube, I was like, yes, this is what I want. I've always been a reader. I've always read a ton. I wanted to connect with other readers. I wanted to find book recommendations and, you know, talk about what other people thought about books and whether or not it would be something that I would really enjoy. And about 2 years ago, I released a video here about me leaving YouTube. And the reason why I wasn't really leaving YouTube, I did have another channel at the time, which I did for a little while. But the reason why I wanted to leave, I kind of outlined in that video, is that I said I wanted to get back to reading as enjoyment. And I think at that time I didn't really understand what was going on with me. I think I had this very vague notion of, hey, I'm not happy in this space. You know, this just isn't speaking to me like it used to. You know, I need to kind of leave this behind and go somewhere else and do something. I found that when I would sit down to film, I didn't have inspiration. I wasn't reading a ton at the time. And since then, I've really delved back into reading. I read 105 books last year, which may seem like a lot, and we'll kind of get into that a little bit later in the video. But I, you know, just started reading again. I started reading whatever I wanted. There was no one to share other than like people I knew in real life, there was no one to share like my opinions or what I was reading with, right? So there was no shame attached to it. There was no nothing like that. And I was just reading whatever I wanted to, whether it be a book on Kindle Unlimited or a book I found at the library or, you know, whatever. I was reading like trash romance books. I was reading some like bad fantasy books. Like I was just reading whatever spoke to me at the time. And a couple of weeks ago, probably about a month, I think I started filming again in January. I didn't release a whole lot because I was just trying to like get back into things. But in January, so the beginning of this year, I decided that I was going to come back to YouTube and I was going to start posting again. And I've realized a couple of things since then. I think I've been able to really narrow and pinpoint why I left in the first place. And this isn't going to be a video where I'm like, hey, I'm leaving again, whatever, but this is going to be more so like the issues that I have with Booktube and Bookstagram and TikTok and all of that. And I, you know, can also recognize that I'm a 35-year-old white lady. You know, just take this with a grain of salt, I guess. But I really wanted to talk about what my channel is going to be and what I'm going to talk about and what I'm not going to talk about, and kind of where I'm at in life and the issues that I have with YouTube and the YouTube sphere and the book sphere, and just talk about how I'm feeling about those. So the first thing that I've kind of noticed since getting back on, especially Bookstagram, so I do watch YouTube videos. I watch a good bit of book content. I'm one of those like silent lurkers where I'll watch and I don't like really comment unless I'm really close with the person, but I do watch quite a bit. I mean, I watch general content on YouTube all the time. So when it comes to Instagram, I have my book Instagram, which is purely for like finding recommendations, connecting with my book friends, things like that. And then I have my personal Instagram, which is like my friends and family, like close friends and family. I have very few people on there. So I have like these two sides, I guess I want to say, of the content that I am receiving. So on like my general YouTube channel, I watch a lot of gaming, I watch, you know, like lifestyle stuff, and then I have like when I'm logged in under my Just Nevertheless channel, I'm reading and, you know, watching like a lot of book content. Same thing with Instagram. And there's one correlation that I've seen recently that really freaks me out. So when I am logged in under like anything related to books, right? it's a lot of discourse on the issues within the community, and it's not necessarily like how we're treating each other, or it's kind of like warped into something that isn't really like that. It's a lot of tearing each other down, and I think that that is really alarming and really scary. And I think the other thing that makes it really alarming and really scary to me is we're calling out a lot of other communities that are doing things like that, but we're not holding ourselves accountable. So you see a lot of people post about, you know, this person said something or did something, and everybody will like flock to their page, and you will see the amount of vitriol that is on that post. And it's like, okay, so this person has done something and we're all flocking to basically rip them a new asshole. Like, for example, with Daniel Green and everything happened with him. So we have this other creator who comes on and is accusing one of what I would consider like booktube royalty of sexual assault. And everybody was like, the comments that I read on his posts are like, I hope you fucking die. Like, it's always the ones that you least expect. It's the people who act like they're so good and great and all of these things, and they're the ones who are doing shit like this. Well, then literally 2 days later, Daniel Green gets on and is like, hey, this is disproving everything. Like, I'm gonna let you make your own conclusions, but this is the other side of the story. And we found out that the creator that had accused him of doing that, from their own admission and their own video, stated that they had lied. And I'm not interested in having the conversation about that in specific in these comments. I will not be engaging with them because I know neither of them personally, and it does not, like, do not have all of the information. None of us are ever going to have the information. But my thoughts about that were, we all, and I mean, I didn't, but there were tons of people who were making videos, who were jumping on the bandwagon, who were like, hey, I can get a lot of views by posting shit like this, because that negative content on BookTube sells, right? So you become very popular if you're posting very negative things. Like, this video that I'm posting right now is probably going to get more views than I've gotten in the last week, because people just love the gossip. And it's not necessarily, at least I don't think this video is gossip, but it's really sad to see. So Daniel's getting these horrendous hate comments. He's getting his entire private life between him and his fiance that they've already kind of like dealt with and worked through, just drug all over the internet, because people for some reason think that they know people, right? So they know people on the internet, they know this person. You don't know this person. You get to see very few minutes of very niche content that they're releasing. And it brings me to another point. Like, if I see somebody post about, you know, not liking a book, the amount of comments on whether it be a reel, an Instagram, you know, post, or like a video where people are like, yeah, you clearly just don't know how to fucking read. There's a creator that I watch, her name is That Girl Reads, her name is Jamie. I absolutely love her. She's very blunt. She's very like, she reads a lot of stuff, and she's very, very informative. And there's a reason I follow her. Well, recently she read Onyx Storm, and this was the response that she had to come out with, because people were just absolutely tearing her to shreds. And I just think that reactions like this, I have struggled with in the past, the assumption that people in the book community are like this. So I think that a lot of the time, I was always baffled with, I guess, why people thought that it was okay to say things like this. And not even that, because I think we understand why that happens, right? Like, we're on the internet, we're putting ourselves out on the internet, and people, I think they kind of forget that there's a person behind the other screen. Like, to see the reaction from Jamie like this, or to see Daniel's reaction to how people were kind of perceiving him, just like completely switching sides, I think it's really alarming. Like, we have a good bit of groupthink happening right now. I think we have, like, in the definition of groupthink is essentially where you are listening to the voices of the many to kind of qualm, you know, like a dissent, or to make everything kind of hunky-dory. And essentially what it does is it takes the critical thinking out of the decisions that we are making. So if all of your friends are saying like, hey, there's, or, you know, everybody online is saying like, hey, there's this booktuber who was accused of this, or hey, there's this booktuber that doesn't like this book, like, you and your friends, like, what groupthink does is all of you will kind of go and like rip this person apart, right? But the issue with that is it does, as I said, takes out the critical thinking. So it takes out that pause. It takes out the second to be like, like, hey, how do I actually feel about this, right? Like, what is the evidence that I have for this? What is and I guess this applies more to Jamie, like when it comes to Daniel, like we always do, you know, kind of talk about believing the survivors, but I still think that there is a bit of, like, you can be like, hey, I've seen that this has happened and I am aware that this is happening, but you don't need to jump in on it until you have the information that you're looking for to make that critical decision. And the reason why it's so alarming that things like this happen, and even though it happens on a smaller scale online, I guess you can say, is because what it will do is cause issues in the future, like with Daniel, right? Like Daniel's livelihood was completely attacked. Jamie is getting completely attacked online because of not liking a fucking book. Like the fact that this is happening, I think people really don't understand the repercussions of it. Like we don't know what Daniel's mental health was going through this. We don't know what his fiance's mental health was going through this. We don't know what Jamie's mental health was going through this. Like imagine if you had such a large following as they did, or even if you only had 100 followers, right? But you post something that people want to kind of tear you apart over. Imagine having those hundreds of thousands of people in the room with you and saying those things to your face. Imagine treating another human being like that. I think people get really caught in the singular experience where they're like, well, I'm saying this. Okay, you're saying this, but 100 other people are saying the exact same thing. And I think the big issue that I have with that is a lot of these conversations wouldn't happen in person. I'm the type of person where I won't say something about, or you know, whatever about another person if I would not also say it to their face. Call me old-fashioned, I'm a little bit older, I'm 35, but I was just raised to be that way. Like anything that I say about another person, or it always follows up with them, or it's not something that's so cruel, you know what I mean? You're allowed to have those thoughts, you're allowed to have those opinions, but it gets really scary to come online and feel comfortable posting certain things or posting about things without the added stress of worrying about whether or not you're going to say something wrong. I had my own personal experience with this, and this is part of the reason why I canceled my YouTube channel. There was a creator, I don't remember her name. I don't even think that she's around anymore. And this was on Twitter, which I don't even use Twitter because Twitter's a fucking trash can fire. But essentially we were having a discourse on sexual orientation, and I don't remember what was said, but I essentially said that pansexual was the evolved form of bisexuality, which in my mind, like very poor wording on my part, but all I simply meant by that was I feel like for me, pansexual is kind of like an overarching theme, and I could have been completely wrong in my understanding, you know, whatever. I was totally fine with being called out on that. But what ended up happening was another creator read that and said that they never would have pegged me for biphobic, like all of this stuff. And I'm like, you don't know me from Adam. Like I am not biphobic. Was bisexual for forever. I am now pansexual. I just like, for me, I'm like, if I like somebody, I like somebody, right? Like it just seemed like a good term for me. And so to be absolutely ripped to shred online, and a lot of bigger creators like joining the discourse and essentially like stifling my channel and stifling like my ability to speak, that was really scary. And it was such a, like, in the grand scheme of things, like obviously I'm able to come back on here, I still have my friends who watch, I still have like the subscribers who've been around for a long time. I didn't suffer a whole lot from that, but I will say, as somebody who struggles with their mental health, it was really, really hard to go through that experience, especially because like some of those comments moved over to like videos and posts and things like that. And when you have a lot of like the bigger, you know, people who used to be your friends who now no longer associate with you because of that, or will associate with you in secret, I found that really disheartening, because I think, like I said, it's that groupthink mentality where somebody says something and no one asks the question, and I don't necessarily just mean for my personal experience, but no one asks the question of where is this coming from, or what were they attempting to say? And that's not to say that people shouldn't be more careful with their words. Like I said, I was totally fine with somebody being upset with me saying something like that. Like if we would have had a conversation, I would have been able to explain or apologize or whatever, but I was blocked, wasn't able to communicate with them. And I do believe in setting boundaries, but I think to a point with Booktube, YouTube, that kind of thing, if you're going to share that kind of sphere with other people, there needs to be, because I see it all the time, like obviously outside of my own experience, all the time with other creators when it comes to, you know, not being able to express your opinions about certain things, or if you mess up, like who the fuck thinks they're gonna be perfect online? Like name one person who is perfect online. I think that there are every single creator is able to make a mistake and to be absolutely canceled because of it, or to be torn to shreds, like not even canceled, but just like torn to shreds, like the comments, the hate comments, everything that kind of comes their way, like that kind of stuff on Booktube and YouTube and, you know, Instagram, Bookstagram, all of that, like it becomes really suffocating. And I saw so much of that like right before I was like, hey, I'm done with YouTube, and I came back and nothing had changed. Like it's all still there. And I think that I'm really worried about our community. Like I really am. So it's changed so much from even when I joined. Like it's turned more into this consumerism and bashing. Now, as somebody who buys books, like I just had a video on like my Barnes & Noble book haul, right? Like I hauled like 20 some books in that video. Some of them were gifts and some of them I purchased myself, right? But I still go to the library. There's like another thing that really bugs me is, like I said, the consumerism. Like reading is for reading books that you enjoy, or hell, picking up a book that you don't know that you're going to enjoy and you either love it or hate it, right? And then exchanging that idea with another human being. What Booktube and YouTube has become, and Instagram and all of that has become, is just this never ending fucking rat race. And I'm sorry that I'm cussing. I'm not going to stop cussing. This is just who I am. So like, it's this never-ending rat race, right? Like you have nonstop, oh, update your spring TBR, update your fall TBR, and there's no discernment from the person who's consuming the video or consuming the reel or consuming the Instagram post, right? Top 25 releases of 2025, or like the 25 best books that I read in 2024 that you need to have in your life, or all of these readathons and shit. Like, it's okay to have them, but I think what ends up happening is Booktube and Instagram has become this rat race of, I have to read as much as possible, or I have to buy as much as possible because I have to get the best photos, I have to get, you know, the best review, I have to read this book first, I have to be the first one to talk about it, I have to make sure that I'm smashing my TBR. And it's really sad to see, because a lot of people are putting themselves in debt trying to buy all these fucking books. Or you have these books that go absolutely fucking viral on like TikTok and stuff, and then you have people who exclusively use the library who never get a hold of them, right? The wait list, like for Onyx Storm, the wait list at my library, I was like 400 in a line of 600 people on like 300 copies. Like, so for me, it's like, if you are a reader who exclusively reads library books, you're gonna fall behind, and you're gonna feel, and I've kind of gotten this vibe from a lot of people, like you're failing in some way. Like reading a backlog book is seen as unpopular now. Like, when did that become a thing? Like, there's so many books coming out, no one, even if you were a millionaire and you could afford to buy every single book that came out, no one is going to be able to keep up with that. So this overwhelming sense of consumerism, and I feel like it bled in from like other places, right? So we have like Booktube or Book Talk is telling you like, oh my god, you have to read these books, and then you have like the beauty community that's like, oh my god, you need this face cream that's gonna make you feel like you're 100 years younger than you actually are, or 10 things you need from Amazon in your home. And there's just so much consumerism. And I think if people took a step back and realized that it is because we are so unhappy in our lives that we are trying to fill it with a bunch of shit that is claimed to have just, it will fix you, whether that be a great book that's just going to speak to your soul, or it's going to be a makeup product or a hair care product or a home product or whatever. Like if that becomes or continues to stay the trend, we are all going to suffer. I've already started to see it. As somebody who stepped away for a couple of years, I didn't buy a book. I bought like 3 books, I guess, the entire time that I was away in how many years? Like, I used to own over 600 books at one point in time, right? Like, I used to be that very consumer, like very, very consumer, and I can afford it, right? Like, so the books that I'm buying aren't putting me in debt. I can afford it, but there's so many people who are going out there who are just trying to buy every single new release, or trying to be the first ones to take a photograph of it, who are buying like 10,000 versions of, you know, one book, all of the special editions. And yeah, they make for pretty pictures, but like the average person can't keep up with that. And I struggle with how much we've kind of lost sight of what Booktube is. Like, there are whole channels that are just dedicated to bitching about things that happen on the internet. Like there are some discourse channels that I think are very, very like poignant and like are needed, but there are other channels who are literally just out here, like even in the booktube sphere, just to like rag on other people or just to talk about like their opinions on the crap that is happening. It's like, okay, like do you know these people? Like do you know that, like do you even really care about the thing that you're worried about? And one of the things that I've learned over the last couple of years is to keep my circle very small. So the things that I do in life, right? Like the things that are important to me, the rights that are important to me, what I feel would, you know, it is important and resonates with me. I do that in my real life. Like I don't do it on the internet, but I'm also having these open-ended conversations with people about their thoughts and opinions, because we cannot be expected, as much as we want other people to value what we value and see what we see and believe what we think is right, there are other people who've led completely different lives from you who are going to come to a completely different solution. Like they're going to come to a different conclusion. They're going to think that the way they feel about something is the right way. And it is not your job to beat them over the head or vice versa to try to get somebody to see the other point of view. And a lot of the times when I see it done online, it's just done with so much hate that it is just incredibly fucking suffocating. And I guess that's really all that I feel about the topic. This is just one of those things that I just thought about and just couldn't stop thinking about, because it's kind of pushed in my face all day, every day, like online, whether that be through the comments or other videos that I've seen. And I think there's a lot of room for growth on YouTube, Booktube, Instagram, all of that. I think in the book community as a whole, I think we need to go back to letting people read what they want to read and less about the consumerism side of things and more about like if you are talking about a book, right? And you're talking about all of the most recent releases or all of the most popular books or whatever. Like there's two sides that happens. It's either a video about or a reel about how popular a book is and how much you loved it, or the opposite where it's like, I fucking hated this book and this is how I feel. Like who are you actually giving that information to? So if we all think the same, feel the same, what is the point of actually creating any kind of content online, right? Like, are you just wanting a sounding board that will essentially reverberate exactly what you say back at you? Like, are you wanting confirmation for how you're feeling about something? Like, we need to start having those discussions. I think we all, when we see or hear or feel something, need to take that pause to actually address what about it is, you know, the root of what is upsetting you. Like when somebody is saying, hey, I didn't like this book, they're not saying that you're a fucking idiot for liking a book, because they are seeing something critically, or they're like, hey, I didn't like the writing style, or hey, this book was really confusing. It does not matter if you liked the book. Like Jessie said in her reel, like, right? Like we can all like different things. We are all different people. I think what we need to do is stop expecting everyone around us to be exactly the same. I think the only differences I ever see on YouTube is like, or on Instagram, is the way we look, right? Like we all look very different, but other than that, I feel like a lot of the ideas or inspiration or feelings or motivations that I'm seeing online are really just regurgitated from other creators. And I'm at the point where like I've been very selective about who I follow. I've been following a lot of smaller creators on Instagram and YouTube, and I've been trying to, like when people first come on and they're like giving their free and open, sorry, that was a motorcycle. When they're giving their free and open opinions without like being exposed to like mass amounts of hate, like those are the content, that's the content that I really like to explore and view, because it's people who come in and they haven't been like bashed down by something like that happening. So that's my goal. Like getting into my goals for my channel and my goals for my reading in 2025, I'm going to continue doing what I've been doing. So I'm going to continue posting like what I want to post. I have a couple of videos coming out that are things that I'm really interested in, right? Like I'm getting back into horror. I have a video dedicated to horror again. I have a video dedicated to YA romance that's going to be coming out, because I feel like some of the YA romances I read are just like 10 stars, and some of the adult romances I read are just absolute trash. And look, I'm allowed to have that opinion, but I feel like we had this discourse on like younger people reading like adult content, and I think there's a lot of YA that's out there for younger audiences. So there's just this fire that's been lit in me to make the content that I really want to make. And when it comes to posting on Instagram, if I don't feel like posting on Instagram, I'm not going to post on Instagram. I don't want to like be one of those people who posts like every single day or feels like they need to post every single day. Like if I'm able to make it happen, absolutely. Like I'm still active on my stories, I'm still talking to people, but if I don't want to post, I'm not gonna fucking post. And I'm not gonna continue to follow the big YouTubers. Like if I see people in comments of other people's videos like being absolutely horrible, like it's one thing to express your opinion, but if you're being horrible and like ripping someone apart and just like being absolutely awful, I'm gonna unfollow you. Like it's not because I fear for myself, it's because I don't want to associate with somebody like that. Like I think that we spend a lot of time talking about like how awful people can be on the internet and things that people have done on the internet, and then we go and are very guilty of doing something that is very similar. And I don't want to be associated with that, and I want to be associated with people who have free thinking and free ideas and are willing to express their opinions. That is what is important to me. So I think I'm gonna end this here. I am so sorry that I have been so rambly. I haven't done like a sit down chat video, but I feel like a lot of us have experienced this. Like let me know down below if you've experienced this or what you feel about the community, any points that I may have missed, or if you disagree with me, like that's fine. Like please put that in the comments. I would love to have an open and honest conversation about this, because I feel like we all feel it. We all feel it, we all see it, we're all afraid of it, but no one's talking about it. And that I think is the scariest thing, that people feel like they've been silenced or they can't speak up about things without needing to like limit comments on posts and, you know, make their content private. So yeah, thank you guys for watching this. It's been a whirlwind, and at the end of the day, I love the like book community, and I love being here, and I love sharing my ideas and like feelings with people and vice versa. I just wish I didn't have to be so selective and kind of afraid to have those conversations. But yeah, that's gonna be it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love you so much, and I will see you in my next one.